since then, until he flew in to be on the show today, because that's a long walk, right?
That's right.
How was your trip?
It was pretty good. It was not nearly as frightening to get on the plane as I thought it was going to be. I did a lot of praying before we got on, and we had the normal turbulence that has to accompany every flight, and that was a little frightening. But we made it okay, and I had my wife with me. You guys were kind enough to bring her too.
Were you white-knuckled the whole?
For a few minutes, just for a few minutes.
So. Take me through the events that happened last summer.
Yeah. So last August 21st, I had a commuter plane flight from Atlanta, Georgia to Gulfport, Mississippi. I got on the plane, and the takeoff and the beginning of the flight was just as normal and uneventful as any other flight I'd ever been on. I was reading the newspaper. The guy next to me fell asleep. The flight attendant was passing out the complimentary drinks going down the aisle. And about 15 minutes into the flight, there was this tremendous explosive noise, a huge bang, and it felt as if the plane had run into something. And we swerved to the left really hard and dipped down very sharply. And my first thought instantly was, I'm going to see Jesus today. That was the first thought I had.
Really?
It was. And it didn't last very long. My next thought, after the pilot straightened it out after just a couple of seconds, was, what on earth happened? And I looked up and noticed people were looking out the windows on the left side of the plane, and I could see that the propeller wasn't spinning anymore. Actually, I didn't know it had actually become detached and lodged in the wing. And the housing was ripped off the engine, and fluid was spraying all over the wing itself. And so that was a pretty frightening sight to see.
So was this a big plane with a lot of people in it?
It was a commuter plane that had 29 people, including the flight crew.
All right, so when you saw that the propeller was off, you must have said, what's going on here? What did they tell you? I
was worried that something serious was wrong. Obviously, it was. The flight attendant made an announcement that we'd lost an engine and that we were declaring an emergency landing. We're going to turn the plane around and head back to Atlanta. And I think every one of us on the plane was concerned. I was certainly very concerned, but the flight attendant was very calm and very professional, and we all looked to her for leadership, and I believe because of that, there was no panic or there was no sobbing or anything like that on the plane. We all knew that we were in a very grave situation, but she kept everything under control. She went through the emergency procedures, the same procedures that she'd gone over when the plane took off, except we listened to her the second time that she did.
You never listened on the first one.
That's right. And then she said something that was probably the most frightening thing I heard while the plane was in the air. She said she'd like for us to take our drinks, the drinks that we hadn't finished yet, she'd just given to us, and place them into the seat back pocket in front of us, or pour them into the seat back pocket. And I've flown a lot of times, and I know that when you have bad turbulence or a problem, the flight attendant has to collect the drinks quickly. They come through the aisle with a big garbage bag, and you just toss them in. And I thought if she didn't have time to do that, and she wasn't worried about cleaning up the huge mess and the stains it was going to cause, I thought, oh, we must be in terrible, terrible trouble here, and the situation must be much worse than what she's indicating to us.
Alive through a serious accident is always miraculous, but not everyone walks away unscathed. Sherry was a Playboy centerfold, and then her life was shattered when she was in a terrible car accident, certainly something I should know a lot about. She broke her back and was paralyzed from the chest down?
T9 down.
T9 down. I understand that you were on the side of the road for 8 hours. How could that be? I don't quite understand that, Sherry.
I'll start at the beginning. I was on my way home from work. I came into a thick pocket of fog, and before there had been no fog. And there was 3 deer trying to cross the road. And the only thing I could do was swerve the other way. So I ended up on the left side of the road in loose gravel, which caused my car to roll. So it was a front end to rear end roll at about 60 miles an hour. And they estimate I rolled 50 yards. So they said at least 3 times, possibly 4 times, I flipped my car at 60 miles an hour. In a rollover accident, you're bounced from the seat to the steering wheel to the door, depending on where you're at. Luckily, I was the only person in the vehicle. I don't know exactly at what point I broke my back, but I'm sure it was in the first roll.
Did you hear it?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I felt the bones crack and I heard it crack. It was excruciatingly painful, and it knocked the wind out of me. And the only thing I could do was drape over the steering wheel. At the time of the break, when I heard it, I also heard a loud, like a bell or a gong in my head, and at the same time it was almost like lightning, neon lights inside my head that went off. So I just held onto the steering wheel and was still being bounced around until the car came to a stop on its wheels.
Were you then conscious when the car came to a stop?
Yeah, I was conscious. And I could smell gas. And I knew that my back was broken. I tried to move my legs, and I couldn't move. I could move my arms fine, and my head and my neck. And I knew I needed medical assistance. I needed the emergency team immediately. And I was afraid that the vehicle would ignite. And
Yes.
I knew that I needed to have time to be able to get out and to get away before the possibility of the car igniting. And so the only thing I could do, because I couldn't.
It was just a normal day.
Did you work in that building?
Yes. I was sitting at my desk. I just gotten off the phone, and the
How
lights
long
went
have you
out.
been at work?
2 hours.
Okay.
And the lights went out, and my first thought was, this is odd. I've worked here 7 years, and the power's never gone off. So that was strange, and then I started hearing a rumbling, and at first I thought it was an earthquake. And I heard a woman go, "Oh," and then I heard more rumbling. And I thought, well, it's an earthquake, I better get under my desk. So I went to dive under my desk, but there wasn't a floor, and I was in a free fall.
By trying to go onto the floor under your desk, there was no floor,
There
and
was
you
no
went
floor.
down. How many stories?
4 floors.
4 floors.
And I was in a dive, and looking below me, I saw what looked like concrete rubble falling about a floor below me, but it was kind of bright, which I thought was odd since there was no power. And something must have hit me on the head right here. I've got a pretty good scar, and my glasses flew off. And my thought was, this isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real. I don't want to die, don't want to die, I don't want to die. And I knew, well, I figured I was going to fall 7 floors since I was on the 7th floor, and I would hit, and that'd be the end of it. And I thought, I can't die. I was just thinking about my dad getting older. I could start to see it in his face. He was 55. And I thought, I'm going to have to take care of them in 10 or 20 years. I can't die. And I thought, well, if the fall doesn't kill me, then certainly my desk or a piece of the rubble would kill
Is that
me.
an actual piece
This
of
is an actual piece. I'm sure this is enough to kill anyone if it falls on you from 7 floors out.
I would think. What happened after you landed?
Well, I was about knee to waist deep in garbage, and my arm was up like this. I was tangled in some metal wall supports, and I was in the 3rd floor office of some people. I recognized the people, and one of the men said, "Is everyone all right?" And I said, "Help me." And he said, "Where did you come from?" I said, "The 7th floor." And he said, "Oh my God." So they had to clear a path to get to me. Then they leaned me against a bookcase, and then they had to clear a path for all of us to get out.
You say, Michael, your father worked in the same building? You
Right.
said you didn't realize that your father had died in the bombing until much later, but that you think he had a lot to do with the fact you survived. Can you
Okay.
tell me about that?
Well, the reason we had a lot of hope that he was still alive, because he could have been anywhere in the building.
People that he was staying with, he was out in the woods with another little boy, and they can't find him.
Okay, is someone up there now still looking for him?
There's people out looking for him.
Wow, were you calm?
Well, it had only been 45 minutes, but I immediately panic when anything happens with him now. I mean,
I think it's time we heard from 7-year-old Chris. We're going to ask him what happened, his latest miracle. Chris, will you come on out to see us? Hi, Chris. I'm not used to interviewing such handsome young men. Are you 7?
Yes.
Okay. I know that a few weeks ago you were lost in the woods.
Yes.
Can you tell me what happened?
From the beginning or the ending?
Well, whatever you'd like to tell me. How did you happen to get lost in the woods in the first place?
Me and my friend were looking for this dog's home, and I left the bike just one place, and I said, I'm going home no matter what. And then I went the wrong way, and he went the right way. And so that's how I got lost.
Did you know you were lost?
Once I jumped over like 5 fences.
Then you knew you were lost? What did you decide to do when you knew you were lost? What were you worried about?
Bears.
We have bears.
You do?
There's a lot
Thank
of,
heavens.
our town has a somewhat of a bear problem.
A bear
So,
problem.
yeah.
So you thought the bear was going to get you, Chris? What did you do to keep the bear from getting you?
Well, I took my green coat and I put it over me so I could be camouflaged and they'd think it's just a book or, I'm not a book, but a bush or something.
And did you lie very still?
Yeah, I said, Chris, don't move, don't move, don't move. Dang, you moved!
Were you worried that you would miss Christmas?
Yes, a lot.
Why?
I wouldn't get any presents under the tree, but plus, this year I got more presents.
So he was gone how long, Mom?
Well, the night that I called, it was about 5:15 p.m., and it was dark. That's why I panicked. And by the next morning, I was really panicked. I mean, it was pretty bad when quite a few, the night's over and your child's still not home.
Did they find him?
Eventually, that afternoon, about 1:15, 1:30, we got a phone call saying that he was
On his way to work one day, and the truck stalled in front of an oncoming train. Is that everyone's worst nightmare who drives? The truck was dragged down the track several hundred yards, and he was thrown from the vehicle. Richard, we've spoken to others about moments before they thought they were about to die. Did any of that happen to you?
Yes, ma'am, it did.
What were you doing on the tracks when the car stalled?
The first thought through my mind was, I got to get off of here, because I had 2 other boys with me. And the next thing I heard was the man on the passenger side hollering, there's the train. I turned and looked and saw a great big white light and the engineer waving, get out of the way. At that time, everything I'd ever done good, everything I'd ever done bad flashed before my eyes.
Really?
And I thought of my children. I remember the time that then I slammed the truck in first gear and it lunged forward and the train hit right behind my head. Left the bed on the roadway and drugged a cab on up the railroad tracks where it threw 3 of us out. I woke up on the railroad tracks and I heard a boy hollering, my back hurts. And I told the police officer there was nothing wrong with me, and she told me I was the worst one of all. And I looked over there and there was 1 foot. And I looked over here and there was the other one where they were broke back behind me. And I reached down and both my legs were swollen up like basketballs. And then I knew then I was in trouble. When I was younger, I was on an ambulance crew, and I knew that shock would kill me, so I regulated my breathing and I remained calm. And I kept myself awake till I got to the hospital.
You said you died 3 times during that accident and the aftermath.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me about that.
The first time was when a train hit us, I blacked out. Next thing I knew, it was like I was hovering above the whole crowd. I could see the train down below. I could see.
Plane at 7,500 feet, and his parachute didn't open. You mean to say that you're sitting here today after jumping out of a plane 7,500 feet?
Yes, I am. Thanks to God, I guess. It was just a normal day, and I had been jumping about 4 years at that particular time, and it was just a Sunday afternoon, just an average day to go out and jump just to practice, and my first parachute malfunctioned. I then pulled my reserve parachute, and it came out, and it malfunctioned also. It wrapped around the main parachute. and tangle round and round and round and straighten both
Had
of them
you
out.
ever had one of the parachutes malfunction before?
No, that was my first time. I had been jumping so long, I was confident, I guess. This will never happen to me, as everybody says.
I've never
but-
heard of 2 parachutes malfunctioning.
Yeah,
What went
tied
through
it
your
up.
mind when you knew that there was no parachute and you were going plummeting to earth?
Well, first
About
off,
90 miles an hour, I would assume.
they figured 85 to 90. I was thinking at first I could fix it, and all I could think about then, I was engaged to get married, and fixing to get out of the Army, and now I was going to die. But I really wasn't afraid. I was really just, angry with myself. But I had really tried to fix everything, and,
And you just got angry.
because I was fixing to die, I guess, and I should have cut the first parachute away, like I've trained people before and had been trained.
You didn't
but I
listen to
wouldn't.
your... When you hit, what did that feel like?
I don't really remember hitting the ground.
You do not.
I remember something vaguely going black.
And that was it.
that was
When
it.
you said your typical reactions for a person to have after going through an incredible situation like that.
Well-
Congratulations on, you've changed your name,
Yes,
you've gotten
I got married in September.
Right, in
Thank
case
you.
any of you recognize her from other shows, it's not the same name. Okay. What makes, what's the difference? What do they go through?
Well, they experience a tremendous loss, and what they lose is a sense of safety in the world, that the world is a safe place and they are safe in it. Actually, what they've lost is an illusion anyway, which we all walk around in a little bubble thinking we're safe and that harm isn't going to touch us and that that's going to happen to the other guy. So that's a very powerful loss, and it takes time to deal with that. What also happens on the positive side, what can happen is that they can get something from this. And that is firsthand knowledge that life is precious, that there are priorities in life, that some things are important.
Live, let alone walk again. He was in a coma for 10 days, and after 5 months of rehabilitation, he was able to walk onto the show. That was one of the happiest moments of my life. Would you please welcome my son, JJ. 4 years later, JJ is now a happy, healthy young man who has really survived an incredible ordeal. It's my pleasure to welcome again my son, JJ. Come on in here, JJ. What have you been doing since the accident?
Oh, gotten back into school.
That's great. Tell me how it changed your life.
Definitely have a new appreciation for everything that I did.
I would think so. I'm thrilled for all my guests on this show today. They're not only survivors, but fighters as well. Keep it up.